Hi everyone. I've been sharing a lot on the theme of wilderness and preparing to receive the new things that God has for us. As I've been praying over the last couple of weeks, unity has been weighing heavily on me. We've come such a long way in Southampton, so I think it's important to hold on to this, especially now that we're looking ahead to what will come after lockdown. I believe that in order to take hold of the new things that God has for us, we will need to go together. I think one of the key things we need to do in order to be ready to hear God and move together is to manage our own expectations of what God is moving us on to as lockdown is lifted. Bev has been talking a lot recently about the difference between expectation and expectancy. She's been challenging us in our discipleship group that expectations don't come from God, they come from us, and they can be crippling. On the one hand, expectations of what we perceive as ideal outcomes nearly always lead to disappointment, hurt, and perhaps disillusionment, as though things rarely work out the way that we imagine. And on the other hand, expectation of disaster or overwhelming situations can lead to fear and anxiety. A biblical example of the first is found as we read the Gospels and see how the disciples prepare for what they expect Jesus to lead them into as the Messiah. There had been a few hundred years of prophecy regarding the coming of the Messiah prior to Jesus, and expectations of what he would do were firmly set. The Messiah would restore the kingdom to Israel and deliver the nation from exile and slavery. As the Roman Empire expanded and subjected Israel to its rule, expectation of the impending arrival of the Messiah to deliver the nation from its tyranny reached fever pitch, with quite a few potential Messiahs arriving, leading uprisings and being clinically and brutally dispatched. Jesus was different. No one had ever taught as he did or done the miracles that he did. Surely he was the one who would lead Israel to glorious victory, kick the Romans out, and restore glory and might of the nation. So when Jesus started to talk to his disciples about his death and resurrection in the weeks leading up to it, confirmation bias kicked in, and it simply didn't compute. They never got it. This is evident right up until the moment that Jesus is arrested. The disciples are in Jerusalem at Passover after Jesus' triumphant entrance. This was the moment. This is what it had all been building up to. They were ready. Judas goes off to get the Romans. In some teaching I heard from Pete Gregg on this, he surmises that it's unlikely that Judas intended to betray Jesus in the way we often think, given his reaction following Jesus' crucifixion. It's likely that he was instead getting fed up with waiting for the confrontation that had to happen and was trying to speed things up a bit. So he brings the fight to Jesus so that he can get on with it. The rest of the disciples, it seems, were on the same page. Peter grabs the sword that he had ready for this moment and lops off the high priest's ear in a wild, adrenaline-fueled swing that missed its mark. Their reaction to what happens next shows how devastating the effect of their expectations was. Jesus does the opposite of what they were expecting, and they all run away and leave him. They then watch him crucified and their world falls apart. They hadn't just lost their friend and teacher, but their whole future. Some began to drift off quickly and head out of town towards Emmaus, perhaps back to their old lives. Then even after Jesus' resurrection, after they've all seen him, they still drift around aimlessly, going back to fishing. It takes some gracious teaching from Jesus and some careful instructions to wait on the Holy Spirit before we see a transformation in the disciples as they finally start to get it and are anointed to carry forward the new movement of God that he'd always intended, the one that had been prophesied for hundreds of years and that they had been waiting for. It was just nothing like what they were expecting. In an example of the other type of expectation, I've already shared how the Israelites expected disaster the first time they arrived at the border of Canaan and ended up crippled by fear and anxiety over the outcome that they anticipated. This leads to another 40 years of wilderness to prepare them for what God actually wanted to do. And when it came, they too waited for God to move. They were camped on the other side of the Jordan for a long time before the time came to move into the land. And when it came, I doubt that they were expecting to cross a river Jordan at the height of spring flood and then walk around a walled city blowing trumpets, but that was God's plan. So as we start to think about the end of lockdown and seek God for what's next, I want to encourage us to be expectant. God has been speaking to us throughout this year about leaving things behind and moving into the new things that He has promised us. He is preparing us in this time of wilderness, drawing us deeper into relationship with Him, getting us ready to enter into what He has for us. But I want to encourage us to let go of our expectations of what that will be like. I have no idea what God will lead us into beyond the fact that He wants His church to bless this city. But I do believe that it will take all of us in unity to fully enter into what He has for us. So let's not be in a hurry. Let's take the time to wait on the Holy Spirit together, so that together we can discern what God is moving us into. Let's hold on to and grow in our unity with all its beautiful diversity, so that we can fully enter into all that God has for us in the next season. Have a great day.